The scream came through the speakers at 3 in the morning, Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Rella dropped her data tablet and stumbled backward. Her 4 delicate arms pressed against the walls of the monitoring station as the sound filled the small room. It was not a single voice, but hundreds, maybe thousands, crying out in languages her translation matrix could not process. She had been stationed at Outpost 17 for 6 years. In all that time, she had never received anything like this. The signal was fragmented and weak, traveling across vast distances of empty space. But beneath the static and the interference, the meaning was clear. Someone was dying, many someones. Rella forced herself to move. Her iridescent skin flickered with stress patterns as she pulled up the source coordinates. The signal originated from Shimmervale, a Gasari colony world in the Pale Corridor. The Gasari were a peaceful species, small beings with crystalline shells who valued art and philosophy above all else. They had no enemies. Or so everyone had believed. She attempted to contact Galactic Union peacekeeping forces. The response came within minutes, delivered by a tired bureaucrat who explained that all available ships were dealing with a trade dispute in the core systems. A formal request for assistance would be processed within 15 standard days. 15 days. Rella looked at the signal still playing on her console. Another burst of screaming cut through the static. There was weapons fire now, and a strange, clicking language that made her feel cold despite the warmth of the station. She made a decision that would change everything. Against every protocol she had sworn to uphold, Rella forwarded the signal to the nearest human outpost. She knew their reputation. Everyone in the galaxy knew their reputation. Humans were Deathworlders, evolved on a planet so hostile that simply surviving there had turned them into something terrifying. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and utterly without fear. They were also the only ones who might respond in time. The reply came in less than an hour. Lieutenant Commander Diana Reyes appeared on the communication screen. She was a human female with dark hair and a scar running down the left side of her face. Her eyes were calm, almost unnaturally so, given what she must have heard in the transmission. "Ambassador Rella," the human said, "we detected the same signal I have. Already forwarded it up my chain of command." Rella felt a flicker of hope mixed with fear. "What will your people do?" "What we always do," Reyes replied. "We are moving." The connection ended. Rella stood alone in the monitoring station, the screams still echoing from her speakers. She wondered if she had made the right choice. Calling the humans was like calling a storm to put out a fire. You might save the house, but there was no telling what else would be destroyed. 3 hours later, she received confirmation. Fleet Admiral Yuri Volkov, commander of the 7th Human Expeditionary Fleet, had ordered full mobilization. Not a single ship, not a small task force, but the entire fleet. 23 dreadnoughts, 47 cruisers, and over 100 support vessels were burning hard toward Shimmervale. The Galactic Union had offered nothing but paperwork. The humans had offered an armada. Rella pulled up what little information existed about the attackers. The signal analysis team had finally managed to identify the strange, clicking language. The results made her blood run cold. Harvesters. The name appeared in records dating back over 10,000 years. They were described as nomadic predators who traveled between star systems, stripping entire worlds of intelligent life. Not for territory, not for resources, but for something far worse. They consumed other beings, keeping them alive as they drained their neural energy. They had been considered a myth, a story told to frighten children. They were real, and they had found the Gasari. Rella forwarded the information to Admiral Volkov. His response was simple, just 4 words transmitted from the bridge of his flagship, the HSS Ironclad. "We are aware, proceeding." Somewhere in the void between stars, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy was racing toward a small colony world to fight an enemy that had not been seen in 10 millennia. Rella thought about the Galactic Union delegates who had dismissed her request. They would be horrified when they learned what the humans were doing. There would be accusations of warmongering and demands for explanation. None of that would matter to the Gasari, who were dying right now. She played the distress signal one more time. Beneath the screaming, she heard something new. A voice, weak but determined, speaking in Gasari. It was a prayer, she realized. A prayer to anyone who might be listening. The humans had heard, and the humans were coming. Rella shut off the signal and began preparing her reports. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same. The Deathworlders were going to war. She only hoped there would be something left to save when they arrived. Counselor Thrym had never known true darkness until the Harvesters came. He crouched in the ruins of what had been the great library of Shimmervale, his crystalline shell cracked and bleeding pale fluid. Around him, dozens of his people huddled in silence, their multifaceted eyes wide with terror. Above them, through the shattered ceiling, alien ships blotted out the stars. The invasion had begun without warning. One moment the sky was peaceful. The next, it was filled with vessels that looked like they had been grown rather than built. Organic shapes covered in pulsing veins and strange appendages. Then the screaming had started. Thrym had been a member of the Colonial Council for 30 years. He had dealt with trade disputes, agricultural planning, and cultural preservation. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for watching his neighbors dragged away by creatures that moved like insects but thought like monsters. "Counselor," a young Gasari whispered, "what do we do?" Thrym did not have an answer. Far across the galaxy, in the gleaming chambers of the Galactic Union, delegates from 100 species argued about procedure. "This is unacceptable," a Trilaxian representative declared, his tentacles waving with agitation. "The humans have deployed 3 full Dreadnought fleets without authorization. This is a direct violation of Union sovereignty." They responded to a distress signal, Ambassador Rella replied from her seat. "The same signal we ignored." "There are protocols," another delegate insisted, "channels that must be followed." The human ambassador, a tall woman named Catherine Wells, stood slowly. The chamber fell silent. Humans had that effect on other species. Even in a room full of diplomats, the presence of a Deathworlder commanded attention. "3 hours ago," Wells said calmly, "I received confirmation that Admiral Volkov's fleet is in transit to Shimmervale. They will arrive within 6 hours. "You had no right," the Trilaxian sputtered. "I had no right," Wells agreed. "But I had the ability, and so I acted." She paused. "You may debate, we will fight. When the dying stops, you can file your complaints." The chamber erupted in outrage. Wells simply turned and walked out. Aboard the HSS Ironclad, Admiral Yuri Volkov studied the intelligence reports with grim determination. His officers had questioned the deployment of the entire 7th Fleet for an unconfirmed threat. He had silenced them with a look. Volkov was 63 years old. He had served in the human navy for over 4 decades. He had seen combat in a dozen conflicts and buried more friends than he cared to count. But this mission was different. This mission was personal. 30 years ago, a frontier colony called New Harmony had been attacked by unknown raiders. They had arrived without warning, taken what they wanted, and left nothing but corpses behind. Among the dead was a 7-year-old girl named Anya Volkov. His daughter. The raiders had never been identified, but the reports from Shimmervale matched perfectly. The organic ships, the clicking language, the systematic harvesting of living beings. They were the same. Volkov had waited 30 years for this moment. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a final transmission from the colony. It appears to be coordinates for underground shelters where survivors are hiding." "How many survivors?" "Unknown, sir. The transmission cut off before completion." Volkov nodded. "Pass the coordinates to all ground assault teams. When we arrive, I want Marines on the surface within the first hour." "Yes, sir." The Admiral turned to the main view screen. Stars streaked past as the ironclad pushed its engines to maximum. Somewhere ahead, an enemy that had haunted his nightmares was about to learn a terrible truth. You do not attack the innocent while humans draw breath. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Shimmervale system. Sensor arrays immediately began feeding data to every ship. The results were sobering. Over 200 harvester vessels hung in orbit around the colony world. They were massive, twisted shapes that seemed to pulse with inner light. Smaller craft swarmed between them like insects around a hive. Captain Nadia Okonkwo of the HSS Tempest whistled softly. "That is a lot of targets." "Then we had better get started," Volkov replied over the fleet channel. He opened a broadcast to every ship under his command. His voice was steady, almost cold. "All vessels, weapons free, leave nothing alive. Today we remind the galaxy why they fear us and why that fear keeps them safe." The human fleet surged forward. In the ruins of Shimmervale's great library, Counselor Thrym heard something new through the constant horror, a deep rumbling that shook the ground beneath him. He looked up through the broken ceiling and saw lights in the sky. Hundreds of lights moving fast, heading toward the harvester ships. "What is that?" someone asked. Thrym did not know, but for the first time in days he felt something other than despair. He felt hope. The first human shot struck a harvester cruiser and tore it in half. Private Amara Singh watched from the observation deck of the transport ship as space itself seemed to catch fire. She was 19 years old, fresh out of training, and about to drop into her first combat zone. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them pressed against her rifle so no one would notice. Around her, 100 Marines prepared for deployment. They checked weapons, adjusted armor, and spoke in low voices about what waited below. Most of them were veterans. They had seen combat before. Singh had seen nothing but simulations. "First drop," a voice said beside her. She turned to find Gunnery Sergeant Paulo Costa looking at her with knowing eyes. He was a large man with dark skin and a face that had seen too many hard years. His armor was covered in scratches and burn marks from previous battles. "Yes, Sergeant," Singh admitted. "You scared?" She hesitated, then nodded. Costa smiled. "Good, scared keeps you alive, stupid gets you killed." He put a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Stay close to me down there, do what I say, you will be fine." The transport shuddered as weapons fire streaked past. Singh looked back at the viewport. The battle above was unlike anything she had imagined. Human dreadnoughts traded fire with harvester vessels 3 times their size. Explosions bloomed in the darkness like deadly flowers. The harvesters fought strangely. Their weapons were organic, firing projectiles that seemed to eat through metal rather than simply pierce it. 3 human cruisers were already gone, their hulls dissolving under the assault. But the humans did not retreat. That was what Singh noticed most. Despite the damage, despite the losses, every human ship pushed forward. There was no hesitation, no moment of doubt. They simply attacked with everything they had. The harvester fleet began to spread apart, trying to surround the human formation. It was a standard tactic designed to overwhelm a smaller force from multiple directions. Against most species, it would have worked. Against humans, it was a fatal mistake. "All cruisers execute pattern Delta," Admiral Volkov's voice cut through the chaos. "Tempest, you have the center." Captain Okonkwo responded instantly. Her dreadnought surged forward, driving directly into the gap the harvesters had created. The maneuver was insane. It put the Tempest in the crossfire of dozens of enemy vessels. It also split the harvester fleet in 2. "She is crazy," someone whispered. "She is human," Costa replied. "Same thing." The transport dropped toward the planet's surface. Singh felt her stomach lurch as gravity shifted. Below them, the colony world of Shimmervale burned. Cities that had stood for centuries were now ruins. Smoke rose from 1,000 fires. 2 minutes to landing, the pilot announced. Costa gathered his squad around him. There were 12 Marines in total, including Singh. She was the youngest by at least 5 years. "Listen up," Costa said. "Our mission is search and rescue. We locate survivors, we get them out, we move to extraction. Intelligence says there are Gasari hiding in underground shelters throughout the city. We are going to find them." "What about the enemy?" a corporal asked. "If they get in our way, we put them down, but civilians come first, always." The transport hit the ground hard. The ramp dropped and the squad poured out into a nightmare. The air smelled of smoke and something else, something sweet and wrong. Singh tried not to think about what that smell might be. She followed Costa through the rubble, her rifle raised, her heart pounding. They found the first bodies within minutes. Gasari, dozens of them, arranged in neat rows along what had once been a main street. They were connected to strange organic cables that pulsed with faint light. Singh realized with horror that some of them were still alive, their eyes open and aware, but their bodies completely paralyzed. "What is this?" she whispered. "Harvesting," Costa said grimly. "They keep their victims conscious while they drain them, something about the fear making the neural energy stronger." Singh felt sick. She had read about the harvesters in briefings, but reading was different from seeing. These were people, thinking beings with lives and families, reduced to nothing more than batteries. "Can we save them?" Costa knelt beside one of the victims and examined the cables. "Maybe. We need to find where these connect. There should be a processing facility nearby." A sound echoed through the ruins, clicking like thousands of insects communicating at once. The squad raised their weapons. Through the smoke, shapes emerged. They were tall, biomechanical things that moved on too many legs. Their heads were featureless except for clusters of glowing eyes. They carried weapons that looked grown rather than manufactured. "Harvester drones." "Contact," Costa shouted. "Weapons free." The first shots rang out. Singh fired without thinking, her training taking over. The drones were fast, but human reflexes were faster. 3 went down before they could close the distance. More came. The battle for Shimmervale had moved to the ground. Singh kept firing. Somewhere in the chaos, she stopped being scared. There was no room for fear anymore. There was only the mission, the squad, and the people they had come to save. She understood now why the galaxy feared Deathworlders, and why that fear might be the only thing that saved the innocent. 4 minutes. That was how long they had before the entire building collapsed on top of 800 Gasari civilians. Sergeant Costa did not waste a single second. He sprinted through the corridors of the harvester processing facility, shouting orders to his squad. Around him, Marines worked frantically to disconnect victims from the organic machines that held them prisoner. "Careful with the cables," Costa yelled. "Pull too fast and you kill them." Private Singh knelt beside a young Gasari child. The little one's crystalline shell was dim, nearly gray, and her multifaceted eyes stared at nothing. Cables ran from her body to a pulsing mass of organic tissue on the wall. "It is okay," Singh whispered, even though she knew the child could not understand her. "I am going to get you out of here." She worked the cables loose with steady hands, ignoring the countdown timer in her head. The child gasped as the connection broke, then began to cry. It was the most beautiful sound Singh had ever heard. Alive, she was still alive. Above them, the battle continued to rage. The orbital fight had become a slaughter. Human dreadnoughts pushed through the harvester formation with brutal efficiency, targeting the largest vessels first. Captain Okonkwo's ship, the Tempest, had taken critical damage during its charge through. The enemy lines, half her weapons were gone and her engines were failing. But she had split the harvester fleet in 2, and now the separated groups were being destroyed piece by piece. "Captain," her first officer said urgently, "we have lost main propulsion. We need to abandon ship." Okonkwo looked at the tactical display. 1 harvester vessel remained in their immediate area, the largest of all. It was the command ship, the one coordinating the entire enemy fleet. If it survived, the battle could still turn. "How many escape pods are loaded?" All crew except bridge personnel, ma'am. Launch them. Captain, that is an order. Launch the pods and clear the bridge. I am staying. Her officers stared at her. They knew what she intended. The Tempest still had enough power for one final maneuver. It has been an honor, Okonkwo said quietly. Now go. She was alone on the bridge when she aimed her dying ship at the Harvester command vessel. The engines groaned as she pushed them beyond their limits. Alarms screamed warnings that no longer mattered. In her pocket was a picture of her wife and their 2 daughters. She touched it once, then focused on the targeting display. For everyone you have ever taken, she whispered. The Tempest struck the command ship at full speed. The explosion lit up the sky over Shimmervale like a second sun. On the ground, Singh felt the blast even through the atmosphere. The entire building shook and pieces of ceiling began to fall. The countdown had just become meaningless. The facility was collapsing now. Everyone out, Costa shouted. Move, move, move. Marines grabbed Gasari survivors and ran. Singh scooped up the child she had freed and sprinted for the exit. Behind her, she heard screaming, falling debris. The groaning of metal pushed past its breaking point. She did not look back. The squad made it outside just as the facility imploded. Dust and smoke billowed out in a massive cloud, covering everything in gray ash. Singh fell to her knees, still clutching the Gasari child, coughing and gasping for air. Sound off, Costa demanded. One by one, the Marines responded. Singh counted 11 voices, 11 out of 12. Someone was missing. Where is Reyes? Costa asked. Silence. Singh looked back at the collapsed building. Somewhere under all that rubble, Lieutenant Commander Diana Reyes had stayed behind to hold open an emergency door so the last group of survivors could escape. She had not made it out. Sergeant, a Marine said softly, we have to move. There could be more drones nearby. Costa stood frozen, staring at the ruins. Singh could see the pain on his face, the weight of command crushing him. He had lost soldiers before, but it never got easier. Sergeant, Singh said. She saved them. Over 200 civilians made it through that door. She knew what she was doing. Costa closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his face was hard. Form up. We are not done yet. There are more shelters to reach and more people to save. The squad obeyed. In orbit, the Harvester fleet was breaking apart. With their command ship destroyed, the remaining vessels had lost coordination. Some tried to flee, others fought on with desperate fury. None of them survived. Admiral Volkov watched the destruction from the bridge of the ironclad. His face showed nothing, but inside he felt the satisfaction of 30 years finally finding resolution. The same enemy that had taken his daughter was now dying in the void. Admiral, his communications officer reported, the last Harvester vessel has been neutralized. The battle is over. No, Volkov replied. The battle is won. The mission is not over until every survivor is evacuated. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships begin ground support operations. I want medical teams on the surface within the hour. He paused, then added, and someone get me a casualty report. I want to know the names of every person we lost today. Every name mattered. That was what separated humans from monsters. That was why they had come. The child would not let go of Singh's hand. 3 days had passed since the battle ended, and the young Gasari girl had not spoken a single word. She simply held onto the human Marine with both of her tiny arms, her crystalline shell slowly regaining its natural glow. Singh did not mind. She had carried the child through fire and ruin. If holding hands helped her feel safe, then Singh would hold her hand forever. The refugee camp spread across what had once been the planetary spaceport. Thousands of Gasari survivors huddled in emergency shelters while human medical teams moved between them. The injuries were terrible, but the physical wounds were easier to treat than the psychological ones. These people had watched their world burn. They had seen friends and family dragged away to be harvested. No amount of medicine could heal that kind of trauma. You saved her life, you know. Singh looked up to find Counselor Thrym standing nearby. His own shell was cracked and scarred, but his eyes were clear. He had emerged from hiding after the battle to help coordinate the rescue efforts. I just did my job, Singh replied. Your job, Thrym repeated the words as if testing them. On my world, protecting strangers is not a job. It is an impossibility. We do not have the strength for it. He looked at the child. Her name is Lyra. Her parents were taken in the first wave. You are all she has now. Singh felt her throat tighten. She looked down at Lyra at the small fingers wrapped around her own. What will happen to her? I do not know. There are many orphans now. We will do what we can. In orbit, Ambassador Rella's ship docked with the ironclad. She had traveled from Outpost 17 the moment the battle ended, bringing a delegation of Galactic Union observers with her. They had expected to find a war zone. Instead, they found humans saving lives. I do not understand, a Velith observer whispered as they watched rescue shuttles descend toward the surface. They came with weapons, they destroyed an entire fleet. Now they bandage wounds and feed refugees. Rella understood, though she could not easily explain it. They are Deathworlders. They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Violence is part of their nature, she paused. But so is this. So is protecting the weak. They cannot help themselves. When they see someone in danger, they act. Even for strangers. Especially for strangers. Admiral Volkov met with the delegation in the Ironclad's conference room. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and new lines carved into his face. Commanding a battle was draining. Commanding a rescue operation afterward was somehow worse. Admiral, Rella began, on behalf of the Galactic Union, I must ask, why did you come? You had no obligation to respond to that signal. The Gasari are not your allies. They have no strategic value. Why risk your ships and your people for them? Volkov was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. 30 years ago, my daughter was killed by raiders we could not identify. I spent decades searching for answers, finding nothing. He looked at Rella. When I heard that signal, when I recognized what was happening, I knew I could not let another parent feel what I felt, not if I had the power to stop it. So this was personal. Everything is personal. Every life lost is someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's friend. If we forget that, we become no better than the harvesters. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent message from the sensor array. Volkov read it, and his face went pale. What is it? Rella asked. Long-range detection, deep space signal, harvester origin. He handed her the data tablet. The fleet we destroyed, it was not their main force. It was a scouting party. The room fell silent. How many? Someone finally asked. Unknown, but the signal source is massive. We are talking about thousands of vessels, maybe tens of thousands. Rella felt cold fear settle in her chest. What do we do? Volkov stood. His exhaustion seemed to fall away, replaced by iron determination. We prepare, we warn the Union, we build alliances. He looked at each member of the delegation. The harvesters have been feeding on the galaxy for 10,000 years because no one stood against them. That ends now. You cannot fight them alone. We do not intend to, but we will fight them with or without help. That is what humans do. He paused. The question is whether the rest of the galaxy will stand with us. On the surface, Singh still sat with Lyra. The sun was setting over the ruined city, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Somewhere in the distance, construction drones were already beginning to clear rubble for rebuilding. Sergeant Costa says we ship out tomorrow, Singh said quietly. She was not sure if Lyra understood her words, but she spoke anyway. There is more fighting coming, bigger than this. I might not come back. Lyra looked up at her. For the first time in 3 days, the child spoke. Her voice was small and fragile. You came. Singh blinked. What? When the monsters came, everyone said no one would help. Everyone said we were alone. Lyra squeezed Singh's hand. But you came. Singh felt tears forming in her eyes. She pulled the child into a hug and held her tight. Yes, she whispered. We came, and we will keep coming. As long as there are people who need us, we will always come. Above them, human warships hung in the sky like guardian stars. The battle for Shimmervale was over. The war for the galaxy was about to begin.